episode 13 of GFD North podcast. My name is Ryan Woodhouse, and today I'll be interviewing Paolo Giandoso.
Hi there.
Hi, Paolo. So, if you're interested, you can go down to gfdnorth.uk, scroll down, and you can actually see a trailer to Paolo's talk that he gave at this year's GFD North event. So, you can go down, scroll down. You can also get a link to Paolo's work that we'll be covering in this episode. If you guys are also interested, you can go up here and you can get a link to purchase the event. You can click the link and it'll take you over to Vimeo, where you can buy the entire online event. Or if you're interested, you can also just purchase an individual talk. So just to give a quick background and introduction to Paolo, Paolo is currently the senior concept artist at DNEG London. He was born in Italy and studied music and media design before going on to study at the animation workshop in Viborg. Paolo has had a long spanning career and in recent years has contributed to films such as Ghostbusters Afterlife, Venom, There Be Carnage, the Matrix Ressurections, Pacific Rim Uprising, Independence Day Resurgence, to name just a few. It's also during this time that he's also worked as a teacher. But in this episode, we'll go into more detail about Paolo's beginnings, the work process behind his film work, and some takeaways for people just getting started. So without further ado, can I please welcome Paolo to the podcast? Paolo, how are you doing?
Great, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So I was just thinking, just before we start out by going through your portfolio, that maybe you could just talk a little bit about your early days and how you got started, because I know that I only started with only a very brief introduction. So I just wondered if maybe you could just tell us all a little bit about your own start into the industry.
Let's see. When I started, when I was in at university, I never thought I dreamed of being a concept artist. I didn't think it would have happened to me. I mean, concept art is very hard to get into. So I thought, I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought, I had a different idea and plan, and maybe like, I'm gonna be a modeler. I'm gonna be, or I'm gonna be a sculptor. I'm gonna do something else. But by the time of my third year, I had, there was this part of me who really wanted to become better at Photoshop, at concept drawing, backgrounds, and one of there was the most logical final project for me would have been going into the preparation of a 3D short, like most of the shorts from my school were. Parenthesis, the third year of my university, you graduate with a working on an animation short. Okay.
Yeah.
So the logical choice would have been working on a 3D short, but there was also this 2D short which had where they were looking for where there was a lot of background painting to make, like a lot of 2D stuff to do, and I thought that would have been also interesting. And so I basically decided to go against my plans and to jump on this 2D short.
Okay.
And because so I would have have the opportunity to practice more Photoshop and to paint more. And I remember my teacher were a bit disappointed about it, because they say, you're good at 3D, you should continue doing 3D, the hard calls. And so I decided to do that, and that was, I have to admit, it was really lucky, because when it was time to find an internship, which is the final part of the bachelor, ends with an internship, I ended up with a color script, which was instrumental in finding a concept art internship in a Trickster film in Munich, which is a medium-sized studio. And this sort of concept art internship are very rare and very difficult to get. And honestly, I didn't know. I didn't bet much on it, and it happened, and it. Exactly. They were, at the time, they were planning to work on animation short made in Germany called The Seventh Earth, and they needed somebody who did color script. And by chance, I had a color script ready, and I had a lot of backgrounds. So the idea was they hired me for that. And so I came in, and for 6 months I helped in the preparation of this color script, and on the backgrounds and other tasks for this animation thing. And at the same time, I had some chances to start working on little things here, little in there for movies, which was something I was really passionate about trying. So this was actually my breakthrough. There was a moment, a panic moment at the end of the internship when I didn't know if they would have kept me.
Right. Okay.
And it was like, okay, then like the dream is over. Then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna be a modeler. Maybe they're gonna hire, or maybe they're gonna hire me as a modeler. And in fact, I was hired for a brief period, like as a generalist. But then they gave me a 6 months contract as a generalist, thinking like, yeah, we're gonna give you a bit of this, a bit of that. And then I realized that I did in 6 months. I did exactly 1 day of modeling, and all the rest were concept tasks. So the next time my contract was extended, I was extended as concept, and from that I basically never stopped doing concept. And I had to admit it was extremely lucky, and extremely lucky case. There are not many concept art internship, hanging around. I mean, which is a pity, because that was something which helped me out massively, because I come from Italy, and I can always suffer the fact that there are not many. It's not very easy to network from provincial town in Italy, or to find contracts which are fundamental for this job. And in fact, when it was time to move from Munich to London, when it was like for my career, like in Europe, most of the film work is done in London. It was very tough, because again, I lacked that sort of networking to the contacts to facilitate that, basically, the jump.
Yeah.
I think. But it worked out fine, so I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I know you just mentioned that you didn't actually do that many 3D based tasks. So when you were starting out at the animation workshop, were you trained purely in 2D then, and then you self-taught?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No.
My bachelor is computer graphic arts. Is, I would say, 75% 3D. We have a very good design base, and there is but it was more 3D classes than 2D, definitely. So that's why I never had problems in using 3D softwares. They trained me as a generalist, which I'm actually thankful for, because a big part of working in a VFX concept, as a concept artist for a VFX studio, is that the art directors or the head of the art departments, they always look for somebody who can navigate many softwares effortless between 2D and 3D, and being able to adapt to new softwares, or be able to solve tasks that can require different programs, and I think it's this is you're saying, this is the short, my graduation short, the one I was working, and I did color script for, and some backgrounds to it.
I remember reading in your background that is this part of your graduation project at the time?
Yeah. And a lot of compositing too. This is another reason why I wanted to learn this up. Like the work on this project, the reward was to learn Nuke, which I still use as a compositing software nowadays. So I did. I was the lead also on all compositing effects for this movie, which allowed me actually to make sure that the color script arrived exactly in a very correct way down in the final result. It was a nice, basically, I was able to put my pose at the beginning and the end for this sort of thing, and I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, that's great. I think as well, I know we'll cover this later on in terms of your work on Venom, but it's great to see that animation, that animation skill that you learned all those years back in school, that you still actually use, because I feel that so many of us that have been in the industry a while, that we learn certain things and techniques in school that we no longer use, but it's great to see that you still use Nuke, and you still use those animation skills that you picked up all them years ago. So
yes,
it's
and many of them I learned during these 6 months of working on the short, on the 7-minute short. Some of these some of the technique I had to development on the time, I remember. And concept art is a lot about problem solving, and there were a lot of problems that need to be solved in this production, which allow me to find workflows that I'm still adopting nowadays. I'm very grateful. A lot of them, and also I'm definitely not an animator myself. In a sense, I'm terrible at timing, but I was in contact with excellent animators and storyboarder. They work like especially two very good animators. The directors and animators of this movie were really, really good. One of them, Michael Myers, Kenneth Lagacek, they did an excellent job, and there is so much of that they managed to absorb just by looking at them, on what they were doing, and I was able to put into my concept. That's why I usually call my stuff ani-concept. I mean, because they're not animations, they are not storyboards. I'm not an animator. I wouldn't dare to call myself such, but I do concept, and sometimes there is a concept that cannot be defined by a single image, and I found out that it's much easier to express it through movement than through a single frame.
I think actually, I know we're going to get onto this a little bit later in the podcast, but as soon as we just talk about it now, just so people understand what it is you're talking about, it's these, what would you call these, like animatics that you do, like concept animatics almost?
I mean, especially this one is very long, so I think there is some borderline with animatics in a sense, but I call them ani-concept for a specific reason. Like a storyboard and animatics usually are very informative and then very down to the base. Like the idea of my work in this, my ani-concept is to sell them. They usually always come because the producer, the director, the VFX supervisor, my boss, they come to me and they ask me a question. How do we do this? How do we improve that? How do we show this? So it's an idea that needs to be sold to the production. So my goal is more like is always answering that original question. It's not the animation per se, but it's how to convince them that is a good way to answer the question. And therefore, there is an element of sexiness that needs to be added to these pictures. A certain oomph that needs to be done to make it appealing, which needs to be there. And that is something usually you don't find a lot of storyboards where very much like we need to finish this in time. Like there is like a storyboard artist, 1,000 and 1,000 of pictures to make, and there is, I mean, although I've seen some excellent storyboards around the internet, I'm saying that I like to call them ani-concept because for me it's a form of concept. It's just done with more features.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And as well, I know going back to your background, and this is obviously a common question that a lot of people get into the industry are probably thinking now, is that balance between the 2D and 3D workflow. So do you spend like a lot of time then on your own just practicing like your 2D skills just to keep those things polished?
Yes. It's a complicated dance, and sometimes I feel like I am falling too much on one side or the other of the blade, like walking on the razor edge. I spent 1 week in Tuscany recently studying the watercolor with Marcos Beccari, which is a great watercolor portrait artist and painter in general. And last year I was studying with Nick Runge, who was an LA watercolorist. So yeah, I do try to keep that aspect of me in as alive as possible. But some other, and then for 2 months I get dragged in a Houdini rabbit hole, like so. I feel like I'm a bit schizophrenic in my. I mean, there's a part for me who would like to take 1 year sabbatical and go to study in Florence and study like oil painting, because I know it would definitely help, but on the other side, there is so much stuff which is, I prepared substance designer arts generator a couple of during the pandemic, which is just to create arcs. It is borderline idiotic, but it was something I was so nerdy about it and I really want to learn it. And it's Yeah, I'm very divided on this sort of thing, but I think that they are both aspects of art that needs to be there for doing my job. I've seen, especially if you work in movies, I think in for a VFX house, I can say that generally the head of the department are looking for this sort of how to say double nature in a sense, double ability to tap in both from both wells. Let's say like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. I've heard that actually using watercolor is actually quite a difficult medium to work in anyway. So I guess it really really trains your mind to focus and really make sure your shapes are right and like the way you think about the light and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that all plays in because I can definitely see in like the more like polished like 2D pieces like this. I mean, obviously there's kind of quite a lot of like 2D skill that goes into tightening these things up. To making the keyframes look really nice. So
especially like this picture actually the for making this the cathedral itself there was a big 3D base because it is a real location in enhanced location from San Francisco. So to make it realistic, I remember that it was modeled in 3D, but then like an Elite too. But then I had to heavily work on it in Photoshop to make it look, to make the mood right, to make it look, to make it look correct. And yeah, this is a very good example of so when both aspects of the work are they need to be balanced and they're very important. To go back to the watercolor, the reason why, especially why I chose watercolor for myself, is because it's difficult. Because it's I wanted something which could drag me away from the endless Control Z of Photoshop. So I feel there is something that we lose in digital, which is the possibility to make like irreparable harm to your picture, which gives you a certain caution and a certain deliberate methodology in your brushstrokes. Like people tend to paint without thinking, and by learning watercolor, you go back to like you force yourself to really think about what you're doing, and this is needs something that you keep. It's so easy to forget. It's a lesson. It's so easy to forget. So it needs to constantly be reminded. That like that you need to try to bring some of that in the digital, and some of that mindset. Yeah, okay, it's the mindset of watercolor that I think is really important to bring.
I mean, I haven't tried too much of watercolor, but I just remember that you have to be especially careful of where the lightest parts of the image, because as soon as you start like laying down the watercolor, the image is getting darker and darker. So you're really trying to think, which parts of this do I really need to make sure I don't touch and all this. So it takes like a lot of thinking and planning. And
it's all in the preparation. That's it. It's the saving your whites is one of the most fundamental things, but it's. There is a lot of it's the best thing to be done through like you need to do some value sketches first, some tests and trials, and there is a lot of it. There is a lot of preparation, and then it's like I like to call it like the siege to the castle. Like you can prepare a strategy of attack, but once the siege starts and when the battle starts, which is a battle of you with the water, there's always going to be chaos on the battlefield, and there is always going to be need for some improvisation. But all the preparation work you did, your studies of black and whites, your color studies, they are all going to help you to that when you need to improvise, and you will just be able to focus yourself on where the improvisation needs to be, and all the rest is already covered in your mind. So is that level of mindset where you're already okay with the aspect of work that can be prepared in advance, you're okay with that, and then you can just focus on let it go. It's a lot of the watercolor is like mistakes are going to happen. You have to live with it and work around them and let it go. So the more you try to control it and try to fix it, the shittier it's going to look.
I think the thing about watercolor is it's got this really nice effect to it. It's almost like an overexposed photograph. Like you get this feeling of like a really like bright day, and the sun just like bleaching out everything, and it just to me it looks nice. It's like different. You spend all day looking at digital, and then you look at watercolor painting. It's like a bit of a break, but
The secret is you kind of look for pictures like that, in a sense, like, yes, it's gone. You are gonna to see, by virtue of the fact that you want to keep the whites, the whites of the paper is nice. Watercolor artists tend to favor picture who have a strong sunlight, like a well-defined shadow shape and strongly defined light and darks, and in this way you will be able to solarize the light shape, and like can put a lot of color in your shadows, and that's definitely one of the best use of watercolor. You can do. I've seen people way better than me. Like I've seen real watercolorists control watercolor almost like an oil, but it's, let's say, watercolor is extremely easy to use watercolor for things like this, like where like you have a very solarized bright light and you put a lot of color in the shadow. I think is what makes it vibrate, and is that where the transparency of the medium really sings. So it's like, as I say, my student, like reality has no obligation to present to you pictures who will translate as a good image. So you have to kind of look for your reference, or if your reference picture is going to translate well in what you do. So it's it's all a matter of selecting the right image.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. You got all these like really nice textures going on as well, all these like subtle color changes and things, which is funny because like a lot of your work actually does have really nice textures. Thinking back to say the skin that you do on the creatures in Matrix, for example, they've got like all these really crazy skin textures going on, and I don't know, it's quite interesting. And I think maybe that should be a good little segue to maybe talk a little bit about Matrix. And I know, like you say, experimenting with like different mediums. So you try watercolors, you try, and like I know you said you went on like a Houdini rabbit hole. And I'm guessing out of that you were able to kind of like learn some new techniques that you use in your film work.
Yes. I wanted to learn Houdini for a while, and I got my opportunity during the pandemic when there was less work to do. So if I don't do it now, I'm never gonna start. And thanks God, I'm very happy I did it. I didn't use Houdini specifically for Kujaku, which is what you're looking at. The question here, Kujaku was already designed. I didn't. Here they were looking for the design specific question. Here was this explore possibility for the skin, which in the end went in a completely different direction anyway. So it was a lot of work which was done, to in the end to go in a different way. But I'm still happy I got a chance to do it. And all of this work here was done. There was a lot of substance paint in this, and a lot of rendering in Arnold. The Houdini thing, where Houdini really became useful, were for the butterfly robot, which it's a couple of projects earlier, I think.
Oh, it's great. So hang on a second.
Yeah.
Butterfly here.
Yeah, that one. Because for that, at a certain point, they asked me to. There is a scene where they have. It's pretty funny. They have these very, very tiny little insects they're not insects, they are bots, but they look like bees and butterflies. And they asked me, which are like, they're ridiculously small, and I had no idea how small they're going to be in the end, but they made it from what I knew. I mean, they could have been as close to the camera as possible. So like they asked me, we need some bee bots and butterfly bots, basically. And but they say they like the director wanted that they from afar they had to be indistinguishable from insects, but if you look really, really close, then you have to look there both. So I would say, okay, what kind of how could I make wings look like they are not organic? So I thought, like, okay, well, maybe I could use Houdini for that, and it was a really of a nice exploration thing for me to. And the side is not strictly necessary to do it, but I managed to put a bit of it because I really wanted. And he managed to basically have this microsphere instead on like by keeping the color of the texture on the base of the wing, but having it done through tiny little sphere unit, which gives it a sort of artificial look. That's the way I was able to use it. There is another couple of things in Matrix that use Houdini, I think. For instance, most of it, like for instance, the wings and the B-boat were done in Substance Painter, and then a lot of Photoshop.
So in this case, the wing structure was actually done purely in Substance, was it?
Yes, and I render. Usually, what I do is that I try different substances together. Then I put them together in Arnold. Then I render different options, and then I put them together so that it's never a single output. Like I merge together different images in a way that it makes to obtain the best look. And always in these cases, I give it a final pass on nuke at the end for having a nice depth of field that looked photographic and you make it look as I say, as cinematic as possible.
Yeah, very nice stuff. And I know there's a couple of others as well in here. So this actually reminds me of there's a breed of caterpillar which looks like this. It just reminds me of it. I'm trying to remember the name. Really strange looking thing, which is black and orange. The shape of that just reminds me of that. Yeah, really creepy design. The classic kind of Matrix robot design there.
The fun thing for this project, it's that although all of these are very small on frame, so for me it was more like an exercise for mostly for myself, but it was Matrix is, when you do a Matrix movie, you're basically doing Jeff Darrow. Jeff Darrow is there, so you have to hit his style and make sure that whatever creature, whatever bots you design, it is done in his style. Otherwise, you're off mark. So it's a sort. And in this case, it was more about understanding what kind of shapes and forms are the one that Jeff Darrow likes to use. It's like saying if you're working on an alien movie, you're designing an alien, you need to do you need to understand Guy. You need to. So in the same way, here is Jeff Darrow, and for me, was this sort of exercise: can I design a creature will look Jeff Darrow-esque? And it was a fascinating task, and. You have to the red and black is really important. But also the sort of material, the feeling, it's and also having that bioorganic look that all of the shapes have, and managing to hit that in a nice way.
Yeah, really interesting. It's quite sad because I feel like Jeff Darrow probably doesn't get as much recognition for his work on Matrix. And I did have a quick look before the call at some of his sketches for, say, the embryo pods for the first Matrix. So really crazy designs that he did for those. Definitely recommend people to go check out Jeff's sketches that he did for the first Matrix. Really interesting work.
Arguably, I prefer his drawing to the final design in the movie. In a sense, they are I think some of his art really speaks strongly in the pencil work. And is when you model it, it's very hard to model Jeff Darrow's work and keep the spirit intact. And most of his drawings have this amazing quality, which you have to really fight to keep. So I think it was a great lesson for me. And I don't know how much I succeeded it, but for sure I learned a lot by studying his work and being able to. Translate his design, form, and shapes to a more cinematic look.
And it's great to see as well. I actually remember seeing, I remember seeing the scene in the film where Neo and I believe it's Trinity are just completely naked, and they got all these insects. Well, the insects you designed just crawling all over them. Such a creepy scene that really sticks in your mind.
No, not all of them. The main one, I think, were already being designed. Generally, when you're working in a VFX studio, you don't get to do most of the big set pieces have already been designed earlier. So I think this was more okay, we need to fill the frame with extra robots. You want to design, and you have to be ready to design. And for me, it was a great task because he allowed me to there was a great deal of freedom that comes with that. And I was very happy to have fun.
Yeah. I know one of the pieces as well that stuck out to me was this Morpheus's face, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I was just curious, actually, because I'm sure there's going to be many people are wondering, like, how did you actually achieve this then? Was this done with particles, I assume, in Houdini or Maya or something? Like, how did you achieve this effect?
If I had done it now, I would have done it in Houdini. But at the time I did it, when I didn't know Houdini, it's something you can easily do in ZBrush.
You'd subdivide and then put a sphere on each point or something like that.
Yes, but in this case, the question I was asked, the only information I knew about this, we have a character called Morpheus, which is not Lawrence Fishburne, and it's a creature made of metal spheres. That's what I knew. And we want to make sure that their concern was that they wanted to be able to have interesting pattern on the surface, but the problem is spheres, wherever you rotate them, they look the same. So they come to me, well, we have this issue. If we instance, which is pretty easy, if we instance spheres on the surface of a face, you will never know in which direction the spheres are rotating, how can we create the instancing pattern? So my idea to answer to that was, and I'm not sure if they kept it in the final movie, I'm not sure, honestly. But my answer to this, that it's quite simple. You don't need to instance spheres. You need to understand to instance group of spheres. So it doesn't spheres, it's like saying cells, how to explain it? It's like, think of molecules,
I know what you mean, like groups of molecules breaking apart, and
molecules have a single have a defined shape, which are made of tiny parts, if the sphere is the unit, as long as your unit is made like maybe 3 spheres in a row, then all of a sudden you have a shape, or maybe you have a cross, or you have 2 lines. So for me, it was like, well, you don't have to consider the unit to be a sphere, but just that the unit is made of spheres forming something, and that's your unit. And then all of a sudden, if you rotate that, you have as many shapes as you like. And to prove that, I prepared that, and as you see, in the close-ups, you can get so many different kind of structures on the skin, and that was the answer.
Really, I really like how that final effects came out as well, and I do believe they actually did use character lights in the film. It's quite a while; it's been quite a few months now since I watched the film, but they do have this character in the film. I don't know if they zoom right into this level of detail in the final film, but I do remember a human-like character made of spheres like this in the film. So this idea did get taken. So really nice to see that in the final there. And actually, I was just curious. What do you think about the Matrix Resurrections? Did you like what they did with the film? Do you think it's as good as the first or the second? How do you think they did?
The first Matrix was lightning in a bottle. Is something like the Fellowship of the Ring, like something like a combination of like a planetary alignment, which is happens once in a decade. It's very hard, and I think they are very aware of it. They in Matrix Resurrection, they even talk about, they have a full sequence about what is the Matrix, how do you recreate the Matrix. I think they were keenly aware that the idea of following it up to the Matrix, it's hard. And I like to think that, when I watch movies today, I more than on concepts, because I've seen so much concept. It's rare that a concept drags me out of the experience. I usually look for concept after, but I'm totally focused on the story. For me, narration is the most important. Also because you can pay good concept. You can throw cash at artists and magically obtain good art. That's how it works. It's I think, and you can, the industry can produce good concept, but there is no amount of good art which can save a bad story. So I
Yeah,
think that's
that's so
why.
true. Yeah, that's so true.
So like it doesn't matter how much cash you pay the art department. Like you put like there is no way if the story is crap. There is no way. It's like you can put lipstick on a pig. Like. But I'm not saying that there are parts of Matrix Ressurections I liked. I thought it was okay, but I thought it's sometimes like you have this sort of once in a lifetime experience like Matrix, and like which is almost impossible to think about. Like just because like Matrix is a surprise movie. Once like it's kind of like once you learn this surprise, like the experience of understanding what the Matrix is makes the first vision of the Matrix absolutely unique. When you don't know about the Matrix, and once that is revealed, it's kind of like in Stranger Things season 1. Once you understand how the world works, the experience, the next experience are gonna always be like less impactful. I think personally. So it's almost unfair try to think like how can we like can we match that initial thing, because the whole point is that surprise, that nothing not you see is absolutely is real.
It's so true. I think just that story, of the first Matrix, of a man who slowly realizes that his entire world is fake and gets invited into this, futuristic version of what is actual reality, where it's this, man's desperate struggle survival against, an AI, an evil AI essentially, is so mind blowing. And if I was quite young when I saw that. I think I was. Yeah, I was quite a young. I might have been like 11, 12 years old. So it had a massive impact on me. It's quite mind blowing for someone who's quite young to see. So great film. So I actually, while we're talking about kind of like old sci-fi films that we've seen from back in the day, I think this would be great just to touch on Ghostbusters, because this also has like a lot of kind of like particles and things like that, and it's a film that everybody's heard of. Like I'm sure like 99% of people listen to this as seen Ghostbusters, if not the newest one, at least the original, right? But so I mean, going back to like the particle effects and things like that, and I feel like this has got a good mixture again of a mixture of workflows and like 2D skill, and I think just that final ectoplasm effect on Goz's around Goz is really interesting. So I just wondered maybe you could just talk a little bit about your process behind this.
Yeah, for Gozer, I mean, I'm very, very happy that I was asked to work on Gozer. I think it was one of those wow. I'm not used to be asked like work on the main villain. It's like wow, that's something, for the information I had at the beginning is that it was very vague. So what I knew at the beginning, this the first exploratory image I've seen is like, I knew at the time, like, well, Gozer is gonna need to appear, and at a certain point, will be depowered, so he's gonna lose half of his power. So he's gonna appear, he's gonna be transformed into a sort of an emaciated, mummified version of himself. So there was this aspect of Gozer manifesting in the real world, and then Gozer being exactly as you see, transforming from this beautiful androgynous shape to a more mummified. Wraith-like aspect. So I work on these two things. Sometimes when like you try to you're doing this, you're trying to sell an idea, like, and the idea I wanted like this is something that was the direction I remember, but I mean an idea I was trying to sell, and it's so far removed, and I don't know how much of it. Yeah, at a certain point you have to let it go. You never know what's going to happen after months that you have seen your concept go. Is that I like the idea that what we see, the shape we see of Gozer, the androgynous shape, is a facade or something more monstrous, more almost Lovecraftian, and there would be like possibility to see at a certain point this facade would break, and we would have more like a look into something more eldritch, that is hiding right behind the ripple on the surface. And so I was trying to sell shapes like that. And I was also at the very beginning, I was trying to sell the idea that Gozer maybe Gozer would have a cape,
Or if we just say, okay, go back up to it. So this,
Yeah, but I that's one I know it didn't go for, but I thought it was like, yeah, why not? Like it's such a fabulous character. It's such a super fashionable, almost David Bowie-esque. Uh, so like, why not? Why not have it appear with an ectoplasm cape and be even more fabulous? I thought that would it's Ghostbusters. You're like there is an aspect of playfulness in it, and I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's
So
quite.
it's always fun to try this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting for. I mean, I know Ghostbusters has. I mean, in a way, they've got a serious task, which is quite like a light-hearted sci-fi film, and this character is quite actually grotesque and serious. It's almost like something out of I don't know, like a really extreme horror film. I'm trying to think like a Pinhead type.
Almost Polter. No, that's also Poltergeist. That's
Yeah, like Polter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, Ghostbuster had some. I mean, it's half. It was. I mean, it's the 80s, so it had some. It could be really scary and at the same time be really, really funny at the same time. Like I don't think there was some way to make these things work together at the time, and I think. If anything, the final movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, is very serious. They took it so serious. I was expecting, I think it lost some of the playfulness that was that existed in the original one. But it's a great movie. Anyway, I think it was fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think we can just see on the screen here just some of those animations of Gozer getting hit by the proton beam and just exploding into like a million pieces.
And I remember at the time I had very little information when I did this. It was very early on, so I didn't know in which setting, because like not always. The more detached you are from the actual production, the less access to the script you have. And at the time, like I had like vague information, like okay, they are gonna kill him at the end. So like okay, maybe it could explode, like, and you throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah. I also knew the director wanted to keep this sort of color pastel color palette. It was very important to him to recreate that pastel color palette of the original, like the sort of. Because I think the 2016 one was a bit more violent. In like the effects were the lights were very bright. Well, like the 80s camera film had only this sort of level of color, so they really wanted to be as faithful as possible to the. I mean, it's a period piece. Basically, they want to have some sort of. They wanted to make it as close as possible as the feeling to the original 80s. Yeah, well, this one instead are done way later. This is basically at the end they wanted option. This is when I knew what this was done on plate, so they wanted some variation on how the eventual demise of the villain would be done on the VFX shot. So this came very end. So it's funny because I worked at the very beginning and at the very end of the work, and completely skipping the middle when I was working on something else.
Yeah, that's it's a really cool sequence of images there. And is that quite typical then of your day-to-day tasks of what you would expect to be working on, or just on a general day-to-day basis then on most of your film work? Is this like generally the workflow that you
use? Sorry, what's the question again?
So is this? Would you say that this is generally what you do day to day then for your work, or is it more? Does it vary?
In a sense, yeah. I mean, it doesn't always happen to me that I have the opportunity to work on the main villain of the story. No, usually is less prominent things, but yeah, it can be. It's generally stuff like that. Especially now I work for DNEG, I got a lot of creature work and a lot of stuff for working on characters. So yes.
Yeah. It's great to have a lot of strings to your bow. Because I know as well you've got some environment pieces, but I think another really interesting piece that stuck out. I know we've covered a little bit of what you did on Venom. What was this like bullet design that you did for Infinite, which I thought was really cool. And I know I sent some questions. I'm just curious, like why do you need such an extreme bullet? Is this thing designed to take down some kind of like monster, or? So I haven't actually had the chance. Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to see Infinite yet, but seeing this, I definitely want to check it out. So
I don't. I mean, I've seen Infinite, and I can tell you that I don't think this. You will see this detail in the movie. So, but it was definitely something. So I regret to inform you that it's there were. You will not see these close-ups, but I can tell you what it is. This is the spoiler. If you spoiler alert, if anybody wants to see Infinite, this is a detonant bullet, which is a weapon which can permanently kill an immortal. If like the infinites are version of kind of like islanders which keep reincarnating themselves, and after when they reach a certain age, they have access to the collective memory of their past lives. So they are level 1. It's like basically if in your lifetime you would reach level 3, these people are level 100, like because every time like they have all the experience of their past lives, maybe in their past life. So like they are super warriors, they're super spies, they're good at everything. And if you want to kill one of these, you need to use one of these bullets which have this virus inside, which is the black stuff you see that latches to the brain. And what they wanted is like that this virus would basically absorb their absorb their data, absorb their soul, and basically prevent them from to reincarnate. And it would who has the capsule in the end would be able to store this information in somewhere else, and prevent the reincarnation from taking form. So I knew that I was given a base bullet from the prop department, which I think is the silver thing without the tip and without the engravings that you see, and without the scales. And I was saying, we need to work how this is going to work. And so I designed this sort of silver, crystal tip, this sort of spiral you see, and this sort of pine cone. They say the director likes pine cones. The director wants to see something that resembles like a pine or something like that. Okay. And it's like, can you do something like this to show that this is technological, but is also organical? So I got all this other information. Like, fine, I need to do something that it looks mean, and he has this sort of black thing inside that looks to be aggressive, so spikes. And they wanted to have this crystal tip that is going to break. They wanted all this sort of check things, so like check, and you need to make sure that it looks beautifully refined, but also evil. And so it was a lot of work.
Yeah, it's really nice. Do you know what else I think would have looked really cool? If there's maybe like mechanical watch parts, maybe in certain things. I think that would have looked nice. But it's a really interesting design. I really like the shot of it going into the guy's skull there. It's really interesting. And as well,
this is
yeah.
Sorry, this is the last time I use ever key shot. After that, I let it go because of the rendering time. I cannot do it anymore.
The key shot's usually pretty fast. Was it slowed on this occasion?
Yeah, it was because of the glass and the refraction. I want to make it look nice. And but at the time, my graphic card I had at the office was not very good, so that's also probably one of the reason.
I'm going to say things like Octane would make absolute mincemeat of things like this. So.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I can also see that you also did a Doomsday egg, which I'm guessing by the name it's not an Easter egg. So.
No, they wanted the Fabergé eggs containing, and this virus was going to end the world. I think it will look, from what I remember, it looks completely different in the end. So very little of what they did translates into the final movie, sadly. But the idea was that the symbol of infinity should be hidden in the design. So if you just take the sort of line that you see through and you extend it on the other side, it's basically a hidden infinity symbol. But you had one side which is Baroque and the one side which is more fractal to represent the two sides of the infinite. It's like there was some design choices they made to try to sell a point. It was a quick couple of days, I think, for this to produce. I mean, I love prop design. Prop design is really fun, and it's something which it's different from creatures, and it's like once in a while, it's really fun to jump on. There are people who have their career done infinitely better than me at that, which they only do props. So I don't want to. I'm not. like a master of it, but I think it's super fun to think about how things work and to put your mind on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you went into a lot of detail with that. And you can see on this final frame, it looks like you did a destroyed Central Park. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, sometimes they ask. This was I think that they gave me a couple of like they gave me these two images of Central Park, like this and the other one, and I just basically, can you destroy it completely? So yeah, this sort of task. Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite thing to do, but specifically because it was such an absurd thing to do, there was some fun behind this, and they wanted it in stages. So I mean, this stuff I can do it. This like whatever.
So I'm guessing for these, just doing like a purely like 2D map painting type workflow, get some.
Yeah.
Just layer it up. Yeah.
Purely matte painting stuff. It's the stuff I did a lot of that stuff at Trickster before. So it's like it's pretty standard. It's the sort of standard VFX concept art thing, which like designing an effect. The only more standard thing is to design a portal. It's I think people who are working for VFX houses, can joke about it usually, that like you're on portal duty when like people ask you to design a portal, because they're so common, and and the brief usually is like that the director wants to see something was never seen before. So and it's always the same. It's so like the sort of task, like exploring the things, are very standard, and you gotta grind through them.
Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, let's have a look. Right, so I know we covered like a lot of Matrix. So actually, I really thought Wonder Woman 1984, which is interesting because I mean, sadly, I had a bit of bias. For me personally, I had Wonder Woman. I was like, it's Wonder Woman. I think I'll give that one a miss. But then when I actually went and watched some of the footage from it, the designs in Wonder Woman 1984 are actually really cool. Really interesting, like armor designs and costume designs. And I saw a scene from Wonder Woman, which I don't know, just the architectural designs and stuff. It just really stood out to me. I thought it was really cool. But to go on to your work on it. So I know you did a lot of the work for this. What's called like a lightning whip, right? And so it's like your task to show how this would look and what the final effect would look like, right?
Yeah, it was very, 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 very early, and I think the VFX supervisor of the movie wanted to show like how we could improve the look of the lasso, like and make it feel like it's a living thing. So they wanted to show how Diana could use it in a way which is more, which would display her acrobatic skills, her elegance, and so they basically wanted ideas for the lasso, and this was task number one. And task number two, the director, she wanted to explore how Diana could fly, and the brief was how could she fly by catching clouds with a lasso. My first reaction, is that she can't. I mean, in a sense, it's very hard to visualize that. Let's say like that. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe what if she, instead of catching a cloud, which is something, like it's very hard to make it not look cartoony. How can we make it, believable in a sense? What if instead of she catching a lightning, which is, it looks like a line. So I think it's easier it's always ridiculous in a sense, because it's a superhero movie, but it's by virtue of compositionally looking like a line, it sounds almost circus-like. So it becomes, there is an element of it which is graphically believable. And so I made that any concept of stairs, like you saw before, thinking, okay, can I sell this idea of Diana learns to fly by catching lightnings? And the idea was that every time she catches a lightning, she charges herself more with, she absorbs energy until she basically levels up. She powers up so much that she unlocks her full potential, and she learns to fly by her own. She basically glows, like she's half goddess, so like she needs to charge herself up with godly energy until and so far as she can fly for a bit, At the time, I knew nothing about the story, and I didn't know why she needed it. I didn't know what she wanted to do. And it's like, I only had that task: can she fly using, catching clouds? And that's why I made that.
Really nice. I'm going to ask I'm going to ask the classic question because I know somebody watching this will be dying to know. But could you just tell us, just like, how did you create this effect, this light effect on the web? I know for a fact someone's going to ask it. So there you go.
Yeah. That one. Oh, it was a long time ago. In Maya, because I didn't know the that. I made a rope and I spined it around in Maya. Basically, I had I moved the point which was supposed to be Diana in around, like a bit around, and I had this rope following around, and then I think I made, basically I connected for every frame. I connected this rope every frame, so to form basically a sheet. If you can imagine, be able to I think the expression is something you can do with NURBS called lathing. I think you.
Oh, lathe, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, basically you create a sheet out of whatever the rope has been, basically like a trail, but since it's a rope, it becomes like a plane. So it becomes like a full sheet, and that I use that as a base for, and since it was a NURBS, was already textured, so I could put light effects on it, and then I render it in Harmon, I think.
Got it. So you've actually got a physical mesh then that makes up that light shape, that you then apply a light material to it and a gradient fall off of some kind.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. And it's idea I had in the first movie, and I always wanted it to be the Wonder Woman, is that the idea that if she moves her lasso really, really quickly, people would only see a flower of light, or like a curtain of light. And I thought it would be really, really charming to see, especially in the dark. And I mean, I like these ideas, I have no pretense that it will be used, because, I don't know what they actually will, what the requirement of the story, which is always come first, so I don't know what the requirements are. But I was happy to see that she does a bit of this spinning lasso in the White House sequence in one, like she stops bullets, and you can see her doing this sort of kind of like light shield done with the lasso to stop bullets in the White House sequence. That one, exactly. That is exactly that. On a smaller scale, but yeah, it looks a bit like that. And it was like, oh yeah, something made the cut. I'm really happy about that. And also some of the moves, I think, with the lasso that you see, I think I recognize some of it, which they might have arrived to the same conclusion by different way. I don't know. I'm far removed from decisions, but it was pretty. Let's say it's always fun to make this exploration, and I'm happy I had the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, really interesting. As well, I just saw on the very last page there was a couple of architectural designs. I'm just curious, is this something you touched upon as well? Because I recognise this from a snippet of the film.
Not architecture, because this was already designed. It was more surfacing design.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah. So you worked on the concrete and things like that, right?
Yeah, this everything which is built usually is the province of the pre-production art department. So it comes to us mostly already generally set up. But in this case, they wanted a sense of scale. So the question was, how can we make it look really, really big? Because what they had didn't look big enough. So you have to, the question to solve, how can we? So how many different? I only updated one version here, but there were 20 different versions of how to make something look big. It's a skill that you need, that actually is very good to have, to possess, and there is so many experience you can use to give size to an object. And it was a matter of just applying them and see which one they preferred.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because on this it does feel massive, and it's not just the bricks either, it's the benches, because your eye sees the brick and okay, well, the brick's going to be so big, right? But then when your eye looks over here and sees the benches, like, well, the thing must be massive. And then you got the mountain as well. I think the only other thing that you could probably add to the shot is birds, because if you have like some birds here,
Sure.
You know, I know it's cheesy, right? To have that bird.
No. I completely agree. I think, and I think
Yeah.
they probably did it at the end. You know, like no good reason why not to do that. Birds, birds always makes that bet.
Well, I mean, you don't need to do it because in the final there's people, right? But anyway, yeah. But I mean, and props as well to who have actually designed that architectural space. When I saw it in the film, I thought it was really nice, and so were all the costumes. It was really surprising. I didn't expect it for a Wonder Woman film. I was really surprised by it when I actually saw it. So yeah, good stuff there. Awesome. Okay, and all right, awesome. So we covered that. What have we had a look at? Oh, I think definitely have a look at some of the Pacific Rim stuff. Are we okay to have a look at this stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
I know this was going back quite a few years ago now, but
sure.
It's just going back to this because I know before you mentioned the prop designs on Infinite, and in this you did a ton of like variations and this kind of stuff, and I think this is important, especially for people breaking in, because having been able to actually just generate a ton of ideas, we say, okay, well, what should this hand weapon, this hand whip thing look like? Could it be this, and just like rattle through a ton of different stuff? I think that's probably like a really important skill to have as well.
Versioning is fundamental. Again, since this, this is very, very early in my career, but it's since it was done on you start already on the shoulder of giants. Like a lot of this work when you start, like the kaiju were already designed, so like this was weapon design for the kaijus, and so a lot of this thing was to basically add on top. So what you need to do is to be able to understand the design you need to overlap on, and to be able to use the same shape language to generate something which seamlessly integrates what you're doing. So that additional skill is that you really need to listen and to understand, to see what makes the design what it is, and not go out of those boundaries and play inside the lines that's been designed before you. And that is something which is a good part of the job. So in this case, I had to design this hand cannon and make sure that, okay, whatever it is, it needs to look like part of Obsidian Fury, which was the design. Same thing for the whip, or for like a sort of thing. Like it needs to feel like it could belong to the original robot. This is the original Jaeger. What I'm saying, sorry, it's not a kaiju, it's a Jaeger. In this case, I wanted to. I remember that my idea was to have a whip that had a particle generator inside, like a particle accelerator inside. So I didn't want to have the classical. The idea I proposed not to have the classical lighting effect, which is very crackling, but having a more streamed, elegant sort of lines, which just to make it feel like those sort of drawings that you see when you look at particle accelerator. You see like the trails of particles. You look like wiggly lines. And I would be like, that would be cool to play with that. I'm not sure if they went with it actually, but they did like the whip. For sure.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Rather than going for the classical kind of like sharp lightning effects, go for something smoother and more flowy.
Yeah, it's so boring. I've seen it all the time. Like, I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing crackling lightning. And for me, it was more like, it's different. Let's try something.
Yeah, cool idea. I know what you mean by that. Yeah, really awesome. And again, just seeing like versioning of like a samurai sword, just like going through like tons of different variations. I love seeing this stuff. Like pages and pages, just like sword designs.
Pages and pages. And
I guess really interesting.
It needs to be played exactly with the same sort of energy, like cheese cutter katana. I mean, like you try so many things and see, like, again, you throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But there needs to be, like, sometimes you have the good idea, sometimes you want to try ridiculous stuff. I mean, the movie itself is quite bombastic, so it's and the good thing is that they see stuff and they come and say, like, oh, we like a bit of this, a bit of that. Can you put it together? And then you create something completely new. And here, like, they would say, we need some missiles for the bad guy in the middle for the good guy. So he, like, if there's anything, I mean, I don't know anything about rockets and missiles. So I was like, for me, it was most like a shape language exploration of how to, like, I want to make it look mean and I want to make it look good. So it's
this is it. I think sadly in this industry, you've got to become a rocket scientist overnight. So you just got to like, okay, quick, what does a rocket look like?
yes, no, yeah, I really feel that, and that's why when I do personal work, I like to take my time and study.
Yeah.
And I recently was. I remember I was saving some videos on YouTube which explaining the history of why shields during the ages have changed their form. And this is so nice to me because like I'm tired of designing like fantasy stuff like that without knowing why weapons have the shape they have. And something I'm really interested actually into is understanding why forms, what there's like what necessity have, why forms have evolved the way they are in the design, because they're usually, generally, was at least at the beginning there was a need for this sort of form. And then maybe became ornamental, but at the beginning there is always a need. So on this shield video, they were showing why, like for instance, the Viking shield is round, but when the Normans start to go horse riding, the shield became more oblong to protect the knees. So it's so nice to me. And like now when I see this sort of shield, my question is like, okay, I need to design this sort of thing because this guy is going on a horse, and it sort of gives me sort of different perspective. And it's almost impossible to do it on everything. And usually I tend to do it more for fantasy stuff or for historical thing than for sci-fi. But it's part of the job is to constantly try to learn new things, understand how the world works and why things have the sort of thing. And you need to look in more different places. Like I think I'm very, very interested in domestic architecture. So the evolution of houses during the ages and what's how especially here in London is very fun to look at, like what has, like why certain houses in Tuscany have a tower on top is because they used to have pigeons. It was a rookery and they wanted to eat the pigeons. So like after a while they had like country houses, they kept this tower, and it became fashion to have it. And then after that, it was just fashionable to have it. But the origin of it was because they wanted to eat the pigeons, and the pigeons like to stay in a tall place, so they build a tower on it. So all this sort of things gives me additional information I can use in design if I never need to design a house, like in a medieval context. I'm sorry, I'm digressing.
No, it's okay. Actually, I think this is a very good time because we're coming up to about an hour now, and I'd really like to just wrap up because you actually cover a little bit of realistic architectural design in the presentation that you did for GFD North. And I mean, without giving away the entire presentation, because I still want to leave something for the people watching it, a lot to take in. I just thought maybe we could just snap over and just look at some of that realistic architectural design as a bit of a segue into what you were just talking about, because I know in one part of your presentation you actually cover, and in fact I think before we do that, maybe we can just have a quick skip through the trailer, and just to give people a quick, for the people who haven't seen it yet, so this is just a quick preview of what that presentation looks like for the people who have never seen it before.
He felt that his little daughter's love was worth 1,000 times more than he had gained by the golden touch. "My precious, precious Marigold," cried he, but Marigold made no answer. Alas, what had King Midas done? How fatal was the gift which the stranger had bestowed? The moment the lips of Midas touched Marigold's forehead, a change had taken place. Her sweet, rosy face, so full of affection as it had been, assumed a glittering yellow colour. Her soft and tender little form grew hard and inflexible within her father's encircling arms. Oh, terrible misfortune! The victim of his insatiable desire for wealth, little Marigold was a human child no longer, but a golden statue. It was the prettiest and most woeful sight that ever a mortal saw. All of the features and tokens of Marigold were there. Even the beloved little dimple remains in her golden chin. But the more perfect was her resemblance, the greater was her father's agony at beholding this golden image, which was all that was left him of a daughter. It had been a favourite phrase of Midas, whenever he felt particularly fond of the child, to say that she was worth her weight in gold. And now the phrase had become literally true.
So now you guys have seen that trailer, so that just gives you an idea of what Paolo did for the presentation. And just to give you like a small snippet of that realistic architectural design, this was just some of the detail and the thinking that went into just the floor. And the original inspiration was this Byland Abbey. Where is Byland Abbey? So it's like North Yorkshire. It's funny, I've never heard of it. So.
Yeah, like trust me, I live in Italy. I like you realize like, oh, what I had this thing like 20 meters from my house I'd never seen. So like it's not like you're not alone. It's I mean I live in London, but I was born in Italy. So so it's very common to discover that you have like gems near to where you live at least. Like and so, but yeah, no, one thing that my boss taught me, my current boss, Ravi, taught me is that you want to concentrate. One of the most important elements of the design is the thing that that is mostly repeated through the movie. And in this case, the floor was the main set piece because, like in basically all the shots, you would keep seeing this floor. So I wanted to design a nice floor. And the setting is Greece, and I wanted to have a mosaic floor. And I looked around, and I decided to go for something completely different, which is like to make a replica of the Byland Abbey floor, because I thought it was nicely fitting for the sort of atmosphere I wanted to create, and the feeling it would give was right more than the substance, like what it was. And so I use it as an opportunity. So it was very important. I looked for many different sort of floors which I could try to replicate, and it was all of a matter of something that I could make in 3D. So there was the doability of the task, but also something that would look nice. And when I read this, I decided to use Substance Designer to create a replica of. You see the scared face because in Substance Designer can be a bit daunting at times. But I use this software, which is brilliant, to create a 8K map of this replica of this floor, which is all the resolution I needed to have a super detailed close-ups of the floor. And it took me a while to get it, but it was totally worth it. And by using the software to first recreate the pattern, and then using this pattern to to mix together different sort of marble substances, which are freely available on the Substance website if you have Substance. You could merge them together and then add some dirt, add some a bit of relief, and then with some work and a bit of patience, you can obtain a result which I found was very satisfactory, for what I wanted. I think that's the final result. Yes, and now you can see like it is a substance, so it contains all the PBR maps, base color, normal, the roughness, especially roughness important, the ambient occlusion, and the height, all in super high definition, which I could then use for the final result, which I think, this is a preview done in Blender, but it shows a bit of the final result for the floor, which I'm quite happy about.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's a lot of really like subtle detail in that floor that it really appears nicely in the film, and like loads like interesting textures in the stones, and it's come out really nice in the end.
Thank you.
I wonder if there's another good one here that shows it actually in the scene. I think it's really sweet. Look at that.
I mean, you see it much like you see that this is as much of the room as you will ever see, because you don't see it as much in the picture, in the final result, but you do see the floor. So that's why probably the room was way less detailed than the floor is, because like you gotta know where to put the work, like, and I think like if you know that the floor is going to be in every shot, and like and the room is going to be blurred and in the darkness, you just don't put too much attention. But I wanted to make sure that to have anyway a good enough environment that everywhere I wanted to put the camera, it could still be believable in a sense. But I knew that the main focus was exactly on the center, so that's where the tension went.
Yeah, as well as for the people listening as well, I skipped over it, but there is actually research that went into that actual room design. So that you did like a lot of research and like look at a lot of old drawings and things to get like some of the room like a bit more accurate as to what actually been there. Because I think something that people always forget is the ancient temples apparently were always brightly painted. People think of these like white, like colorless buildings, and they weren't. They're actually usually, well, from what I've read what I've read. They're actually usually painted bright colours, which I think is what people always forget. It's hard to actually imagine. It's hard to actually imagine those temples that we always think in our minds as being white and like just stone coloured as actually being like bright red and blue and things. It's hard to imagine, but apparently that's how.
Yeah. I mean, especially statues, Greek statues were colored with color. We were so garish. It would be. It will look extremely well in RuPaul Drag Race. It's astounding how much color was an integral part of art in ancient Greece, and we simply do believe a sort of a lie like that white or black and gold, are classic, which is something which was invented in the 800s, like when the archaeologists started to rediscover Greek statues. They decided that white was good, and color was bad. But there were already ample at the time. There were already ample hints, ample proofs that this was not true. But these hints and these proofs were completely ignored because the narrative that lily white, shiny marble is beautiful and color is bad was more important than the truth, which is that at the time statues were brightly colored, and in a way that if we saw now, it would be. I mean, we have been conditioned to the point that it would look extremely bad taste.
Yeah, it's interesting that we just tend to forget that fact from the history books. I did listen to a podcast or a show or something once that said they have actually taken samples of red ochre or whatever it is, like small paint pigments from some of these like classical sites to prove that actually there were. And I've heard again, like the Roman statues, they actually painted the faces, like they paint the actual statues' faces and clothes and things different colours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that a lot about like you were saying before, just learning about history and all that stuff. Just taking the time to listen to those documentaries and things. All it does is just build your visual library and give that extra bit of info.
Especially in this work, for me, it was important to take my time. That's why, I usually, when you were saying you need to become a rocket scientist in one day, there's something I hate about. Is probably the aspect I don't like about working in movies, that you never have time to do proper research. I envy this of game concept art. They tend to have more time to develop, to research. So when I do personal work, I try to give myself some time to breathe and to understand what I want to design and make sure that I'm not doing something stupid. At least try.
It's so true, especially when you're doing prop work like mechanical design. There's a lot of engineering stuff to learn, and you're never going to learn all of it on the job. It's something you kind of have to do in your own time to get all that stuff looking right. But anyway, but I do think the effort that you put into this presentation and all the research and the detail you went into is worth it, and it's definitely worth giving that a watch for the people who haven't seen that yet. Really interesting breakdown and process, and it shows in the final results. So for the people who haven't seen this yet, I'd definitely recommend going and checking it out. But yeah, so that just wraps up just about everything. I know we've gone quite a little bit over time, but do you have any last words, anything you want to share with people, maybe any advice to people breaking in or anything like that?
I think try to explore different things. I found out that like, for instance, can you see that lion thing I did at that one? I think that's a good one. Like, that is a picture I did, another of my exploration things, where like I was able to mix together different softwares, different things, play with different softwares, and try to put a bit, like, to learn a bit from each one of them and to put them into your art. Something that helps me, but do not try at the same time to not let the 3D completely control you, because it's the dark side. Let's say it's a bit of the dark side. You need to use it without being consumed by it. I think at least my boss always says that the final result that we do is always pictures. So in the end, you never keep track, lose track of what we're doing, which is picture, and it's completely right. One good thing I learned when doing it, one technique I learned, which I think is very helpful, is that I like to use 3D when I'm painting as a reference. So in this case, I create a sort of set for me in 3D of Trafalgar Square with these living bronze lions, to create a sort of set which I could use as a reference for my painting, which, like, I wouldn't be able to recreate it in real life, but painters, a classical painter, would use models live models to paint. Why cannot we use 3D as a live model, like in the same way, to inform us how like a bronze statue would look if we don't have a bronze statue in that exact pose? Because I am not good enough to imagine how a reflection of bronze, tarnished bronze, will look in the thing, but I can do substance. So, like, once I have this, I can create this sort of base. And I could, if I wanted, slap it directly in paint over. But if you want to obtain something that looks consistent, I think it's way better for me to keep the 3D and use it as a reference, and I think the final result pays off.
It definitely does, yeah. I think it's also just a good mixture of techniques. I actually don't see that, well, I don't personally see that many people using Meshroom at the moment. I know it's going to get more and more popular.
It's very useful.
Yeah. I mean, just being able to go to like a site, just anywhere in the world, and just quickly snap a bunch of pictures and get like a 3D scan. I know for a fact it's going to get more popular, but it's not something I see people playing too much with. But I really like the final result, because it doesn't look 3D; it looks hand painted, and I think that extra effort's worth it.
I did a similar thing for, like, if you look in my page, there is a red image, which is a cover of a book.
The red one, this one.
Yeah, not exactly this one, and it's the same thought. This is a building which exists in Italy, in Turin. It's called La Mola Antonelliana, and I wanted to. This is the cover of a book called Il Paese Nero, Dark Country, a book about the relationship between a group of youth and a fascist threat, which is truly growing in Italy at the moment. So for obtaining this sort of lighting, which the building exists but is not in this location, is not so in the middle of nothing. But I sketched up the model in 3D. I lit it in the way I wanted, and then I use it as a reference for making a painting which is fully painted, but that in a way it looks lit in the way I like, because I don't have it helps with the imagination to put lights. Like, it basically is your own set. And I think it's a technique I'm very fond of, and I think it's nice to explore it. I would recommend people to try it.
Yeah. So for this one, did you actually use the same technique of taking the photos, or did you have the 3D model?
No. In this case, no, I not, because I didn't have the opportunity to go to Turin and make the photo. Also, the building would not have been easy to take. The building is massive. It would not have been easy to take so many photos to reconstruct the building in such a precise way.
Yeah, and plus the camera lens obviously is quite important, I guess. Because you'd have to use like a really long lens. You'd probably have to go in a massive circle around the building to get that.
Yeah, it's impossible. There are so many other buildings around it, so like it was impossible. So, but the important thing was for me to be able to lift like the base of the building, to have a feeling of how the building will look in this sort of red ominous light, and make sure that I had a good base on it to use it as a reference, and it did, and I think it works. It works the way I wanted. So it's something. I would say my advice would be people to try. If they know how to play with 3D, and they want it's not necessary. Photo bashing is a great skill, and I encourage people to know about it. But it's also good to use 3D purely as a reference, just to inform your painting. And I think it's something.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, going back to that, what you just said about using 3D as a reference for your lighting. Obviously, there's a way. Industrial design style rendering where you say, okay, well, the light is coming from this angle and all this. What you can almost use logic, but would it look as good as if you had that reference handy? Probably not. So it's always good to have, like you say, that sphere, that metallic sphere in the environment. They can say, okay, well, we've got a sculpt and we can light it properly.
Sure.
In the environment.
Sure. Absolutely. You can also cheat. And there is a lot of cheating, it's like you're not required to, once you have, like, if you have a super realistic reference, it doesn't look good, cheat. There's no need to adhere to there is no obligation to adhere to a realism if it works against the emotion you want to communicate. But I think it helps to know, to obtain a sense of believability, to have a base. It's a base, and my point is 3D is a base, and it's only a base, and it shouldn't be more than that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, at least for me personally, like seeing how much time spent over painting over the top of your 3D render is something I definitely should try. So so it's got a nice effect. Great stuff.
Yeah. And it's always often, and even that, after you painted so much over, if you're trained, you always spot where the 3D was or where the photo was. If the picture is being fully painted, is organic and is completely consistent. It's just a different sort of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I've got one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you could be any superhero or a villain, who would that be and why?
If I could have the power of a superhero, or a villain,
absolutely, yeah.
I am. Oh, you see that I'm very fond of Wanda, Scarlet Witch powers, because I actually worked on her superpowers in her very very first iteration for Avengers. I think I like Wanda Maximoff powers, like Scarlet Witch. I think she has like these reality warping powers, which are really fantastic. And as a concept artist, the ability to create and like to change the world and to create things from nothing, I think is really really good. This image actually is pretty funny. It was not used directly in the movie, but this concept of her changing the mind of soldiers so that they fight against each other, and then 10 years after, I saw WandaVision, and I saw something which is absolutely identical. And I was like, oh, that's where he went.
Oh, right. They just reused the idea for different...
yeah, but I'm fine. I'm happy. Maybe it was a coincidence, but I was positively surprised. Let's say.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Okay. Yeah, that's very cool. All right. There's definitely a couple of films I need to check out. I really fancy seeing this Infinite now. Now I've seen the concepts, might check some of this stuff out. Awesome. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Paolo, for showing us through your portfolio.
No worries. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And if you guys are interested, you can go on over to gfdnorth.uk and you just scroll down. And you can see the link to the trailer for Paolo's GFD North talk, where he goes into depth, showcasing his process, talking about using a wide range of techniques, and the final result is, obviously, very nice. And also you can grab a link to his ArtStation page where you can just go and check out some of the work that we've just seen. And that just wraps up on. Obviously, if you guys want to actually purchase it, just click on the links here, and that'll take you through to the Vimeo pages where you can purchase either the individual talks or the entire event. And that just wraps up this podcast episode. So thank you very much, Paolo, for coming on.
Pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you for
listening.
having me.
Yeah, it's been great having you on. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. My name's been Ryan Woodhouse. See you next time. Bye bye.
Ciao.